Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. As a part of devotion to God is the acknowledgement of our flaws and removal of our tendencies that cause us to make flaws. Basically, devotion is all about removing impediments in the process of moving towards God. And since this motion is an eternal motion, and we are reaching God internally, what this means is to remove the internal dispositions that we have, the internal impediments, to allow the light to emerge. You see, the light has always been with us. But us, ourselves, as personal identities, with the tendencies that we have, are the coverings on that light. Now, as opposed to saying, I'm going to procure light from outside, the real thing that happens in devotion, or is supposed to happen, is that these veils are removed in order to allow the light to shine brilliantly. And that is why the Sufi masters often say that it's not a question of gaining something from outside, but it's a question of polishing the mirror of the soul by removing the stains that you are. The stains not that you have bought, the stains that is constituted by you being yourself. Once you remove that stain, the mirror will reflect the divine. So devotion is all about moving to God and purifying ourselves, as we stated yesterday. There are signs and then there is purity. Before there comes the knowledge of the book and wisdom. This purity is only to do with cleansing the inner self. Now, what are sins? And we are often told to remind ourselves of our sins when we sit before God and ask Him to forgive us. You see, sins need to be understood accurately, very, very accurately. Sin, one is an act. The other is that inner state that prompts that act. Now, what we do in the month of Ramadan, let us say, or when we are in Arafah, is we recount the acts of sin. And God forgives the acts of sin. It is like cleansing the slate clean. And that is why in the hadith it is said, the most wretched soul is the one who by the end of Ramadan has not been forgiven all his sins. And the only other occasion that that soul has for that forgiveness is on the day of Arafah, because God promises to forgive all sins. And on that note, and I often repeat this, the Blessed Imam Sadiq alayhi salam has said that the biggest crime against God on the day of Arafah is to assume that God hasn't forgiven. For God forgives all sins, because you are there. You've appeared before God on a day in which He has promised. And He will be true to His promise because you have come there in devotion to God. However, that means to clean the slate. As soon as we are out of Arafah, and as soon as the month of Ramadan leaves us, we perform those sins once again. What that tells us is that the slate has been cleaned, but the tendency has not been removed. The real sin is in the tendency that we have of sinning. So the inner rage that we have, that constitutes the real sin. The outer expression is an act of offense to another. That can be forgiven by the other and by God. The real sin is the inner greed due to insecurity. The real sin is the inner fear. The real sin is the inner distrust of God. The inner sins are the inner inadequacies. What devotion does is, it constantly pushes us to acknowledge ourselves before God. So we are bowing to God and we are saying, I am surrendered to you and what pleases you. I am prostrated to your authority. What that means is not only my body, but my mind and my soul. So now, not only is my body regulated in accordance with what is righteous morally or befitting morally, but my mind is also surrendered to you in the way in which I will think. And my heart is also surrendered to you in the way I will allow emotions to be entertained by me. What that does is constant reinforcement of that meaning is it slowly allows us to bring our mind into check. And our hearts, we become vigilant through devotion of our inner state. So now, when we offend somebody, we seek forgiveness. But at a deeper level, through devotion, because we are constantly saying to Allah, I'm submitted to you, I will not uphold my ego. Because the natural tendency is, بَلِ الْإِنسَانَ عَلَى نَفْسِهِ بَصِيرًا وَلَوْ أَلْقَى مَعَاذِيرًا. The natural tendency within us is to preserve our false identity in our ego, the self that has been constructed through what we presume we are, that is the ego. So when we do wrong, immediately we offer a justification. So even when we know we've done wrong, we will seek forgiveness, but there will be a level of justification that justifies us. And therefore the mind will not be in a state of deep introspection and reflection upon itself. It will not be vigilant upon itself. But this constant reinforcement of devotion to God, that I'm surrendered to you and my ego is being surrendered to you, what happens at that stage is that the tendency within the mind becomes a point of scrutiny. That actually, it's not fair and it's not right for me to think this or behave in this way. It is not right for me to cheat. It is not right for me to lie. So that first the actions, the outcomes of those tendencies will stop. And secondly, the tendencies will be addressed. That it's not right for me to be so distrusting of God. I've surrendered to Him. I need to accept His decision. If I'm surrendered to Him, then I should know that He is the best of planners. If He has not sustained this for me, then there is a good reason. And maybe I should not be so covetous of it. Maybe I need to forgive. Maybe I shouldn't be carrying these tendencies and burdens in my soul. So we begin to introspect and regulate the mind. Now, this is now devotion working at an inner level for cleansing the inner tendency of sin. Then we come to the state of the heart as the devotion deepens. And we say to the heart, no, it is not right for you to be involved in this emotional state at this moment. Because what happens is that emotions arise from the heart and they cause the mind to constantly think about it. And the mind reinforces those emotions. So they're working in sync, feeding each other this negativity. So we cleanse the mind slowly and then we work towards the heart through devotion. This emotion of rage, this emotion of greed, this emotion of fear, this emotion of insecurity, this is not right. You see, I know that the one thing I have been challenged with is anger and fear. There comes a point where you say to Allah, no, you are my aid, come what may. I don't want to be what we are afraid. And I'll talk about this later on. To come to that point where to say to Allah, no, make me fearless of hell. As unbearable as it is, make me fearful of hell altogether, because you are my security. So devotion purifies us from our own inner obstacles that are constituted by us, ourselves, and our personalities. And once these obstacles fade away, that is when the light of the beauty of God begins to emerge and we become complete beings. So devotion has to be performed mindfully with this attitude that what is preventing me from reaching my goal, and to understand that I am myself the impediment. And this directed devotion to God is a process of me removing my impediments, and that is the process of cleansing the soul and allowing the light to re-emerge. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.